So this is being recorded. So hopefully some of you who weren't able to join us tonight will be able to watch this when we broadcast it in an edited recording at a later date and have it available up on our Facebook page. I'll start by introducing myself, and then I will introduce our esteemed panelists who are gracious enough to give us their time today. My name is Derek Chang. I am the Director of Learning and Engagement here at Two Rivers Gallery. And I'm very honored today to host our Forestry Stewardship panel, which is a virtual event which we're recording for Facebook. To discuss the impacts of the forestry industry on Indigenous land, particularly as it pertains to our current exhibition, The Tree Planters by Rita Leisner. I am joined today by two representatives from the Nacazli, and I will turn it over to Annie maybe first to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about where they're from and what they do.
Hi, I'm Anastasia Munroe. I go by Annie. And this is my coworker, Clara Jack. We work for Nacazli at the Yunka Hawanle department, which is stewards of the land.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the more like basic translation of it. And we've made that transition more formally recently because we were previously known as Natural Resources for Nacazli. And our new positions are guardians for our department, and we do a variety of things with environmental monitoring, direct liaison work with our KO members and industry, as well as other industry within the territory, and really engaging on our land and being accountable, as well as community engagement.
Mm-hmm. And colonially, what is the name of the territory that you guys are working on?
Well, the town settled is Fort St. James.
Lovely. And I am, of course, coming to you from what is colonially known as Prince George on the traditional territories of the Lheidli T'enneh. And I guess I'm just here to listen to your voices and also to help moderate conversations or questions that come into the Facebook chat session, which you can feel free to comment and respond to if anything comes up that you would like to know more of, or you would like either Clara or Annie to respond to in a more involved way. I guess one of the questions that I think I discussed with you guys that could use some clarifying and your perspective is the term land back and what that specifically means to you in the context of the work that you do.
So within the context of the work that we do for Nacazli, our nation has never ceded territory. So we've never signed a treaty to like sign over our rights to the territory. So when we think about land back, we're thinking about not taking away people's property, their homes, and kind of telling everybody to leave the continent, because that's just not a reality that'll ever happen, nor would we want that. It's about having respectful relationships and also understanding that we are here and we still have sovereignty over our lands and governance to enact our own stewardship.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. The idea of hospitality, the idea that we are invited guests on this territory as well is an important conversation to have when we're thinking about the forests. Clara, do you have anything to add to that description?
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that it's unceded land, and they just call it crown land still. they don't really realize that we haven't given up the rights to the land.
Mhm.
And, yeah, I come across that a lot, that we can't just do whatever we want, we can't build wherever we want, but we do.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, even that term crown, like crown land, kind of harkens back to like a very colonial understanding and relationship that we still do have with the colonizing nation, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I know that I've talked to Clara with you a bit about some of the very important work you do with land-based healing. Would you be able to share some of the things that you shared with me about the things that you do?
Yeah, I'm part of a land-based healing and wellness program with the College of New Caledonia. And I go out with the Nagasley Health Center with community members, with youth, and we just bring people out on the land so they could just smell it, feel it, see it, just to be out there. A lot of them is a healing experience, just to be out there. A lot of them don't have vehicles or means to get out to the bush. So we have vehicles, the health center has vehicles. So it just feels good for them to be out there. And then me and my mentors explain about the use of the plants, the identification and use of medicinal plants. We gather for teas, we make salves, and just to get people out on land. Fred from the health center, he goes out once a week, and right now we're taking students out. With my CNC work, we're just taking adults, so anybody that wants to sign up, a maximum of 12 people. And they don't have to be, they're just community members from Fort St. James and Nagasley or surrounding area. And we go out and gather, we forage, and we do simple stuff that's not risky, just like the dandelions and the plantain and stuff. But I know the last month there was a proposed logging block on a place where I gather medicinal medicine and my huckleberry patch and my soapberry patch, and I managed to stop that because I just said, no, this is where I come every year, and I don't want to come up here and see it all logged out. Sorry, but you're gonna have to just drop this logging. So we are able to stop some of the logging, or we are helping to design some blocks in the community forest so they're not so massive. More buffer areas between the logging blocks, more buffers on the riparian zones. So we do have a say, and trying to get that to the community members that like it's been going on so long. They go there, they're going to do, the logging industry's going to do whatever they want anyways. And it's not true. I just like, okay, no, because if you have a trail there, how do you want to manage the trail? Do you want it machine-free zone, not logged at all, or logged and stumped, or like they do have a choice on things that are out on the land within their sturding area. Trying to get that message across is taking a long time because it was been such a long time that we couldn't say anything at all for years. Like from the beginning of logging, we couldn't say anything. We couldn't manipulate any blocks or drop any blocks. So now it's taken a while for them to realize that they do have a say. We try to go out and GPS these gathering spots, so they're on a map with our GS guy. So it's right off the bat. He goes, no, that's a berry picking spot. That's medicine picking spot. So it's excluded from any industry that might be going in there. So just try to get people out on land saying like, look, we're GPSing this spot. It's not going to get logged. S- Trying to get community members to believe that we can make a difference.
Yeah, which is very difficult given like a really horrific history with Indigenous people, especially where you're just displaced from the land and, you know, basically told and not told to survive. And that you have no right.
Mhm. Yeah, so industry does need to, and it has to happen. That's just a reality, I think. But it sounds like from your work that there's an ability to hold industry accountable for the nature of their practices and the impacts that it does have on the land. Is that correct?
Yes, that's very recent. Like our the CSFNs, like all 7 nations, are in midst of negotiations with forestry in general and returning, you know, stewardship, and also for us to have an ability to manage our own logging if that's our choice.
Mm-hmm. Are there specific Indigenous logging groups or companies that are Indigenous run and led?
Well, that's true, but we do have we do have a Nacosly wood license, is it? It's an area-based wood license. And that's within my stewarded territory, so I have a say in their logging practices within that area.
Yes.
And they get logging company to log for them, but they do consult with, I'm the spokesperson for that area. They do consult with me for all their logging logs, so.
Mhm.
And another thing is, when we are, when they talk about streams of significance, like they say, well, there's no fish in that stream. And we know there's fish in that stream. They're just not marketable fish, right? So they said, oh no, it's, I said, and then there's lake, they go, there's no fish in that lake. I said, it's called, was it? It had the name of a fish in our language. And I said, why is it called, Clock Lake? Clock Lake. They call it Clock Lake now, but it's Cloak Lake. It means that there's fish in there. It's a type of fish that we set net for. And they said, no, it's not a fish of significance. So they just like, wow. They said there's no fish in it. It's like, no, it's named after a fish that's in the lake that we fish every year.
Mhm.
So trying to get them to just like realize that, you know, it's not all the fish are important to us, not just the fish of significance that Canfor wants to put on the list or.
Yeah, and again, with just like you know, always having to prove yourself of like our generational knowledge since immemorial should be on the same, like the same value, not just, oh, Western science has to confirm it first.
Right. I think Clara, you and I talked about like whole ecosystems, right? And that, you know, it sounds like in this case, Western science is mostly looking at what is harvestable, what is important to be put to market. And it comes back to the dollar signs that are involved. And that is not always a priority that we should be looking at.
No, there's quite a few other things that are coming into play, like the biodiversity management zones. They're supposed to stay out of it. The old growth management zones, they have to stay out of there. The ungulate winter range. So there's a lot of pieces coming into play now that's going to be on our side to preserve a lot of the land without us having to fight for it. say, no, it's on top of this here, now you have to stay out of there. We don't have to fight to try to get them to stay out of there, so that's a good thing, but
Mhm.
yeah.
And definitely plays with into like Blueberry River, talking about cumulative effects, because previously Canada was just saying, oh, well, this one block, isn't gonna make too much impact, but if it's, 3,000 blocks, and it's just you're adding and saying, oh, it's not making an impact, it is. And that goes, and also for our territory, like we're really concerned about road rehabilitation and access and how that's impacting our ungulates in our territory with more increased access for skidooers and just ATVs, and then creating that path for wolves, and then that creates it more insecurity for ungulates in our territory, and that just goes to, and I think the number in our territory is 30,000 kilometers of roads.
Mhm. So you're not just concerned about human impacts.
Well, it's humans that put all the roads in that make ways for the wolves to get in, but
These impacts are creating so much disruption within our understanding of the natural world, and how we would want stewardship, because this disruption is causing issues just for the animals and vulnerability, losses, and like succession of like them to be able to have calves or other babies. And then even for us back at community, we're also directly impacted because there's so many people out hunting and they're not getting a moose. Whereas previously, like let's say 30 years ago, you could go for a drive and you'll see a moose at every corner. And it's just not like that anymore.
Mhm. Can you maybe describe to me how it's defined, what is protected land?
Within the context of forestry.
Yes, yes.
Well, I think protected land goes again with Indigenous governance, and us also having our land stewardship objectives of being like, okay, well, we marked out these areas of concern also with our community input, and we would like these to be a no-go zone. We don't want any impacts in this area because it's critical, because they need this critical habitat. Let's say for the caribou, because they only eat, well, they eat a really specific diet with lichen and their habitat, and they go in the alpine and the higher in the mountains and then come down for the summer. And if their habitat is impacted and there's more roads and there's only so much habitat within that space, and then it keeps getting encroached and reduced, then there's just, especially with overpredation.
plus they're very sensitive to noise pollution. So when you have machines and stuff out in the forest or up in the mountainsides, they'll
Right.
go away and they won't come back.
Mhm.
Yeah. So again, it's just like our worldview is always not about ourselves, but also about the health of our ecosystems. We're not separate from the land, but a part of it. And also we have knowledge from generations and generations and respect about the land that, we are not above the animals or the trees, and they have a value in just being themselves and just existing.
Mhm. I really love that, and it's worth repeating that we're not, separate from the land. We're a part of it, and I just wanted to kind of repeat your really important words there. And I guess when we're talking about protected lands, when I'm thinking about slogans of tourism around British Columbia, like Supernatural British Columbia, and we talk about parks and services, like how does that kind of restricted zone factor into the ways in which you talk about forests, and how that relates to people's enjoyment of the wilderness, which I think I've heard you refer to as the bush.
Mhm. Well, I'd say for myself, like when I see the slogan and marketing and, making the bush other, it's, creating a narrative that it's like a frontierism, that you got to conquer it, that you're going to go there. And it's not a part of our world that we live in every day. And just like a leisure thing that you don't have to think about, that it's not impacting or you're impacting. There's no relationship of an everyday, and respect too, of just like that, always that underlying respect.
Mhm.
And the thing is, when we go out to the forest or the bush, we look at everything. We look at the squirrels. What are they doing with their nests? We look at the beaver dams. How early did they start gathering their winter feed? We look at everything, like the berries. Okay, they're not very good this year. Why? And then we should maybe just leave them for a year. And some places we don't go pick because we just, they're not doing that good, the berries or something. So we'll go to a different place, and we know how to just look at everything. We don't just see the plants and the trees and the mountains. We look at all like the spiders, like the mountain pine beetle. If we knew it was coming in the old days, we would have burnt the forest before it spread. And
Mhm.
we weren't allowed to do that because of like capitalism, right? There was a market for all those trees, and I don't know. Now they just cut all the trees down because they're all dead because of pine beetle. And
Mhm.
if we seen that in the old days, we would have just made a forest fire in the early spring when it was safe and burnt that forest before the bugs spread. And
Mhm.
so the spruce beetle is now here. Like, oh, we have spruce beetle. We have to take care of that. It's like, oh, well, I don't know.
Yeah, and again, like we see everything is in relation. Even the way like our culture is when we introduce ourselves amongst other native people, we say our name, our parents, our grandparents, our clan, our community, where there's that social accountability of like where you come from and respect. But you were never apart, you were always connected.
Yeah, I think that's important to acknowledge. I think oftentimes the commercial does say things like British Columbia, yours to enjoy, right? That comes back to the notion of consumption, um, and consumption without offering anything in return or considering what Clara has said about sustainability impacts.
Mhm.
Clara, when in your ethics of harvesting work, are there things that you harvest that you've noticed declining or being in more scarcity or more difficult to find?
It depends on the weather. Yeah, like everybody likes the huckleberries and the blueberries, and sometimes some years there's not very many. So I think this will be a good year this year because of all the rain we have. I see them coming out already. I see people are starting to pick. Um, but so we'll pick as much as we can this year, and then just in case there's none next year. So we'll and then we share it after next year if nobody, some people are out of huckleberries, then we'll share it with other people. And the etiquette is that when you go out to pick, you don't pick everything, that whole bush. You just pick, say about 10% of it and move on, and just leave the rest for the birds and the bears. You always leave something behind, like some of your water and your water jug, piece of a sandwich. I used to leave tobacco, like smoking tobacco, but I just found too many chemicals in it now. So I try to get organic tobacco. I got gifted some a couple years ago. I'm out of it. but I will take my coffee grinds and tea leaves and stuff from home and leave that out there. Just anything in our culture, the women's hair is very sacred. And people can't just touch somebody else's hair, right? You just can't do that. So I'll take some of my hair and leave it out there for the land for thanks. You always ask permission to go out when you're going out. Can I come in your forest? Can I pick some of your berries? Yeah, and we usually smudge before we go out. We'll do not sage smudge, but the branches from the spruce tree or the balsam tree, we'll gather it and we'll make a little fire and we'll smudge all ourselves so we don't bring any of the negative energy from, say, work or town into the forest with us. It just cleanses. And we'll do that before we go gather. You share, take only what you need. Don't go crashing around the bush and making all kinds of noise and breaking branches. And here you just have some respect for the forest itself. It's there for us, for our food, for our medicines, for our peace of mind and our wellness. It's there for, it doesn't have to be, I mean, it's there for our spirit.
Yeah, just getting back to like parks and forests too. I had a friend who's also Indigenous that posted about a Parks and Services pass, and that was something that I didn't know about. And there's obviously when we drive to the national parks now, there's a charge for admittance. And so were you both aware of like an Indigenous Parks and Services pass that existed? Yeah.
Is that just the free pass for Indigenous people to go out? That seems
Access their land, yes.
to access their own territory and to like, and you know, to even be there and to like remember our histories and be a part of it is,
Yeah.
you know, it just, again, it's like another status card of like, oh, I'm an Indian, I get to be here, I'm allowed.
Yeah, but
And also like, I'm gonna be counted, I'm gonna be in a system.
right.
You know, it's, I don't know, just like
Or you have to be paid to be granted access.
that seems very opposite from our beliefs about access to the land.
Yeah.
And also continues, you know, a narrative of separation, that it's not, you know, not supposed to be a part of us.
Mm-hmm. I think that's connected to the conversation that we had about leisure, right? And the colonial kind of construct of a leisurely enjoyment and escape into the wilderness that is so ingrained in society and culture. And so, you know, we pay a toll at the gate to be granted access to these sequestered kind of zones of natural protection.
But it's curated too.
Of course. Yeah, and I mean that word is very much a part of the art world too. Curation and having a curated experience that is. It doesn't see all the things that are outside of the picture.
Yeah.
Why I'm so grateful to the both of you to contribute to this conversation that really extends and expands the learning of the current exhibition, The Tree Planters. I think Annie, you and I talked a little bit about like the history of the depiction of artists who in early days depicted forests and painted pretty trees and landscapes. And there was a specific phrase that you brought up with regards to that. I was wondering if you could remind me.
It's terra nullius. So in the indoctrination of Canada, they talked about the justification of, colonizing the land, and that Indigenous people were savages and not civilized, and they didn't know how to use the land correctly. It's not, they say it's God's given right, and you have to use it in these ways for you to own it. And we don't really think of ownership or land in that context at all. And then continues the narrative of that we are not people. And our culture is not worthy or even understandable. Yeah, and just that the land is empty for the taking, and not we don't have living histories. And even when we go out to the land, you think with elders, their knowledge is contextual. You won't get the same experience and their knowledge when you sit in somewhere else. But if you go to a specific place at a specific time, it's the land holds the memory for you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that issue of ownership goes back to the beginning of our conversation around land back, right? And this idea of owner, who owns this and who owns this property. And what I'm understanding from getting to know your perspective and hear your voice is that it's very much not a part of, not about ownership. It's about the relationships that we have between the land and the people and the animals and the insects and the plants that all take up space and coexist and cohabitate.
Yeah. And us to have respectful relationships between non-natives and natives, and that we can work together and still meet our goals if we are in a respectful way, but also recognizing that the history was incorrect, that we are here, that we have self-governance, we have systems, and that we have claimed areas that are hereditary or clan or whatever their system of cultural claim and ways of knowing that they are a part of that land.
So with the Nakasli, we have the KO system, and it's each families have an area of land to steward, and KO means where your feet go on the land. K is feet, yo is the space. So we have a KO and Patlat system within the Daca territory.
That's interesting how responsibility is shared amongst families within the community.
Yeah.
And reciprocal relationships, respectful, if one area has an abundance of medicine, or hunting, then we would approach our KO Wedachan and ask permission to go hunting or collect on that. We don't just go over.
So there's some story of the trees. It's oral history. Long time ago, the trees used to just wander around the land, and they used to just drag trees over to the fire to get it going because they had no axes or anything. And this guy was bringing over, he's going to take down this tree. It was not quite dead. And the poplar tree goes, well, just take it. And then the balsam tree says, no, you can't. It's half alive. It's still alive. It's still growing. You can't take it. So they got into a fight, and the balsam tree fell in the fire, and that's why he has blisters on his bark. And the poplar tree fell beside the fire. That's why he has ashes on his bark. And then the spruce, the cottonwood tree came and the fir tree came and they had the same fight. One of them wanted to just burn that half dead tree and the other one wanted to leave the half alive tree. And then they got into fighting, so they had little adzits and little sharp objects and they gotten into a slashing fight. And that's why they all have balsam poplar and the fir trees have big gashes on their bark. They're really deep gashes. And so and then the man got scared and ran away. And so the creator said, look at you guys. You're all fighting each other. Says from now on you have to respect each other and love each other and help each other out. But you guys, I'm gonna give you guys roots and you have to stay in one place. That's why the trees all have roots and they stay in one place. But they do love and respect and help each other out. And they talk to each other through pheromones or through the root systems. They let each other know if there's danger coming. There's a lot, it's a longer story, but that's the basic of it.
Mhm.
Love that story.
Oh, thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
I appreciate it. Often when I tour people through the gallery, we do, coming back to the statement around Terra Nullius that Annie made, I do talk about my own experiences with learning art history and specifically groups like the Group of Seven and Canadian painters who depicted the land in the same ways that Annie has described, as kind of like a pastoral fantasy, right? This like beautiful thing that's ready to be taken and to be settled, and settler relationships are what we're contending with right now in our conversations around the forestry industry and the work that you both do in stewardship and the valuable traditional knowledge and understandings that you both hold. So that's a wonderful way to kind of insert ourselves and our own lived experience into those situations and come to a newer understanding of things. Is there anything else that you guys feel that you wanted to say? I have maybe a few more questions. Don't see a lot of people joining us live, but I hope this has been a very fruitful conversation for the both of you and something that people will tune into once it's recorded and shared.
Yeah, I hope so. And I hope it, inspires more conversation and interest. Because I think within media and just historically, I think there's been a narrative of divide and conflict really inserted that we're, I don't know, just against everything and, capitalism and about people having a livelihood and all of these things. But really, I think it's about respectful and reciprocal relationships and that we, value the land and we care so much and it's a part of us that we just want that place to steward and to be taken seriously, that we're, not just, oh, here's the token box. We did our consultation.
Mm-hmm. I think the big word to take away in that comment is reciprocal.
Mm-hmm.
There's one thing in my notes that I wanted to ask you, Clara, about kind of, you talked about going out and seeing the squirrels and seeing if the beaver dams have been built. And I remember you telling me a bit about, large populations of a certain type of fly that gave you an indication as to, the harbit, the kind of like the sorry, I'm losing my words here, but the health of the region and the lake maybe.
Yeah, we do have salmon flies. I think the other name they're called is June flies. They come, they're in the air right now, and they have been in the community and around the lake for about a week now in abundance. Last year I might have seen two, maybe the year before I don't know if I seen any the year before, but we call them salmon flies. They come just before the salmon come up the Fraser, right before they get here. So we know, so hopefully if there's abundance of those salmon flies, there'll be abundance of salmon this year. That's one thing when the early Stewart salmon run was getting depleted. I don't know what happened. It just went down. And we chose our own communities within the Stewart Lake, Takla, Trembler Lake. We chose not to fish the early Stewart. That was our way of what do you call
Sustainable.
sustainable fishing, right? So
Mhm.
they know there's not that many. Let them go. Let's let them go. It's been probably 18 years since I've setting up for the early Stewart, but we just said that they're going to get a bunch of prize this year, and so we do have a fish hatchery. The band does have a fish hatchery, and we let, I don't know, 60,000 I think go this year in a couple of the creeks, and I think next year they're going to be going to go get some eggs. Next week, that'll be the early Stewart, and they'll be putting them in next year. I think they're looking at 200,000 prize for next year. So yeah, so it was really nice to see the salmon flies come back this year. I haven't seen that many salmon flies for probably at least 10 years, maybe longer. It's been a long time since I've seen that many. And I just love them. They're on everything. They're all over, but I don't know, bug people maybe don't like them, but they're really it's a great joy to see them back again in abundance. Gives us hope for the future of our salmon.
Yeah. So you're looking for very specific indicators
Yeah.
of health and
Yep. We're always looking at things like, say, if the beavers start getting their food early and say in August instead of October, then we say, okay, it's going to be cold winter. The bee and the hornets, if they nest in the trees, then it's going to be warm winter. If they nest in the ground, it's going to be cold winter. So we're always looking at signs that our ancestors passed down to us, that we pass down to our kids, and we pass it down to the other community members. Of, did you know this, or did you know that? Or you always look for signs for like the health of the community, the wildlife community, and their surrounding ecosystems.
Clara, we're going to have to be in touch in August so you can tell me how to prepare for this winter.
You have a clue by then. Yeah.
You think?
Something will show itself. Yeah.
For sure. I'm trying to remember early on, you said that you did a lot of work with small groups of 15 people, and oftentimes you worked with a number of youth. What has your experience been, and has there been any kind of like really great relationships built with the youth that are learning?
Yeah, we went out with we have a bunch of students hired, summer students. We went out last week, and they're very respectful of like the teachings that our mentor Maggie, the elder, was talking about. They listened, they weren't goofing around. Like sometimes you get kids that just goof around and don't listen. They were very good. They paid attention. It was really good to see them just listening. So I've come across groups before and they're just goofing around, throwing berries at each other. It's like, no, you don't do that. Like, come on. But it was really good to see this group is just listening to everything we said and taking them in. And then if we take them in and take them back out again, they'll just like, okay, we need to do this. This has to be done. We have to give thanks. We have to do this much. So it's really good. And then you take them out and you teach them things and they'll know that, you know, there's not too much poisonous stuff out there. We only have a couple of poisonous plants, but I don't come across them very often. But there is respectable ways of using some of the plants. Some of them are stronger than others. Some of them are spiritual and you can't just pick them. You have to have a reason to pick them. One plant is just for, it's a root. And I remember the elder Dickie Benwell was always saying, he goes, there's one plant, it's up in the mountains. He says, if you get that, you got to really, really pay for it. That means I really have to give something back. And then I couldn't figure out what plant that was. Now I know it was this one plant, Indian hellebore, and we didn't use it for consumption, but they used it for to put in their hunting bag for good luck or to keep the negative energy away, or you put it in your house, but you can't just go pick it and take it, whatever. You have to have a really good reason to pick that plant. So, but you know, it's so hard. Like I was going out with my auntie Betsy and I said, what do you need? And she goes, look, you know, she was about, I think about 90 then. And she goes, I can't find it. And she kept saying the Dakas word for it. And I was like, what is that? And we kept wandering through the bush and okay, stop here, let's go look. And she goes, no, it's not here. And I was like, I didn't know the English word for it. And if I did, I would know what plant she was looking for. But she kept saying it in Dakas. She didn't know how to say it in English. So I didn't know what plant she was looking for. But she goes, no, it's not here. It's jeepers. I got to learn my language a little bit more, especially the plant names in Dakas language. But yeah, with the youth, yeah, it was really good to see them listening and paying attention and just being very respectful of when we were out there in the forest, in the bush.
And an added point too is for like a lot of members, there's, you know, lack of ability to go out for, you know, transportation or whatever reason. Even, you know, people that have been adopted out or in foster care, it's like, it's really meaningful to have those community programs like what Clara does to be out and learn the medicines and learn the actual protocol, and it gives you that sense of self and connection that's, you know, when you've been lost in the system for so long as well. And I think it's just a real sense of safety is one of the big takeaways as well.
Mm-hmm. And a place to find connection,
Mhm.
connection to the land, connection to your identity.
Yeah, like that's one of the biggest reasons when we're displaced and have all of these pressures from ongoing colonialism to, you know, that we're in poverty or, you know, substance use or whatever's going on, that you can't be in a healthy place. Land and that sense of identity and self and safety is what brings you back, and that connection to community as well. That's your lifeline.
Usually, Nasal Bay, Hawanli, usually bring as many of the foster kids back every year. In the summer, they do 1 week of culture camp. It's like 1 week of medicine making and canning. 1 week of they bring them some salmon in or 1 day of doing salmon. 1 day of like they have all these different display tables that they could go around and they could participate in these different activities. But they really enjoy that. And then the last day is we have our bathlats for the last day, and everybody learns how to do the bathlats and who's hosting. So they learn about that. They have a table on the genealogy. And so what would like to do is like maybe get the old photographs to associate with their ancestors. We haven't gotten that far yet, but because of COVID, they didn't have that culture camp for the last 2 years, and they are not having it this year again either. So there's 3 years of kids not coming back. But we do have usually Jonas Morris comes out and takes the kids out for a little walk to look at plants and identify plants, and he has a different medicine, and Fred has different berries that he's making for them to taste, and like soap berries and
Mhm.
teas. He has different teas he has made so they could taste the different teas. And there's this other guy, he does teas too, medicinal teas, but he does some with beaver castor, so it's like a different taste. And they're like, oh no, this smell is from a beaver castor. And so
What is a beaver castor?
it's a castoreum of the beaver. It's their scent glands.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
Kind of smells like vanilla, hey?
yeah, I guess so.
I think it was settlers in the past had used it like a little bit for baking, but
okay.
it's often used in hunting and medicines.
Uses bait when you're going beaver trap or going trapping, like for fur-bearing animals. It's used, the smell is used for bait. But the beavers eat so much cottonwood that the cottonwood is a strong medicinal plant itself, but the cottonwood is not condensed, but is mostly in the castor. It's
Concentrated.
concentrated in the beaver castor, so you just need a little piece of it, like they put it in the tea, or but you have to take just a little bit of it because it's so concentrated.
Yeah. And of course, with any medicine, like you need a guide to use it properly, especially with protocol.
And these are the teachings that these youth are learning?
Yeah, the ones that are in foster care.
Yeah.
Well, I think they might get maybe like 70, 75 youth come back, and they all camp out. They have tents set up for them and places for them to stay. But yeah, they come back for 1 week every August or end of July or August, but this is their 3rd year that they haven't come back. So that's 3 years that some of the younger kids haven't been back yet. So sorry to see that, but that's the way it is, I guess, with this pandemic, right? So maybe hopefully next year they'll all come back they'll all be 4 years older than,
Mhm.
yeah.
Okay, I think we've been discussing this topic for about an hour, and I just, on behalf of Two Rivers Gallery, I want to thank you both for your time and your dedication to preparing for this panel. Yeah, thanks so much for being here with us and
Yeah.
extending this conversation.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, thank you. It's like I like talking to other people about our culture, because there's a lot to our culture than just a bunch of us. There's just so much that we're just here, but we take it for granted that we just here and exist and
Yeah, and
know stuff.
also we're not part of history, but we are living and still here, like Clara says. I think there's still some people in the world that think we died out.
Mhm.
Nope, you're here and you're here with us and you're sharing your wealth of knowledge and your experiences and um, your lives. Yeah. So we really appreciate that.
For
But
that. Sure.
thanks so much. I'm going to end the chat and stop the recording. And I will see you in a bit.